HelpSeeker Technologies, and today we're giving you a sneak peek of our new, improved, very exciting Karto product. And this is really a social data insights platform that you'll actually see it in action today. There's constantly new things that we're introducing, and for you, our community, we always want to make sure you know first, and you get the scoop as soon as we know as well. So your feedback is always welcome, because whatever we do, we build this for the social sector, with the social sector, and so your input is how we develop our ideas and how we develop our products. So again, I'm joining you from Treaty 7, today's Calgary. And at HelpSeeker, we always start our big meetings, our important meetings, with land acknowledgements. But we've also most recently started to personalize these a little bit, because they, just reading stuff out it's a good reminder of why we do what we do for social justice and social change. But it's always very informative when you take that step further and start digging into the land acknowledgement as an opportunity to learn more about your own community. And part of our staff meetings has been folks on our team taking turns doing a land acknowledgement and personalizing it. So my favorite was when one of our team members on the development team actually took the bus and across Toronto and learned about the Indigenous territory that it used to be. So that was a really cool one. And another one where Josie on our corporate services team took her kids on a walk and started learning about her backyard. Nose Hill is a beautiful park in Calgary, and it turns out it had this huge and long, since time immemorial history for Indigenous people as a gathering area, and she didn't even know about it until she started doing this. So again, it's a little change that we made that has just made this land acknowledgement really come to life for us, and I thought I'd share that as well by way of welcoming you today as well. So a bit about us. I'm not going to take too much, because you probably know about us as well, but we're a social technology innovation B Corp, so a social enterprise. We started out 2018. We're at over 50 folks now, and we build solutions that help those of you that are working on complex social challenges. So today's webinar has really been targeted towards folks that are on the front line, because you are the front lines. You're the ones that are doing the heavy lifting. We've tended to talk a lot more to funders and systems planners, but over the last 3 years, we've really dug into what it takes to make social change happen. And surprise, it's really the front line where that change happens. It's in the magic between the provider and the person getting assistance that spark, that change starts to take hold. And that's the spark that we want to grow across systems to make them more person-centered, to make them fairer, juster, more holistic, etc. So we find that talking to service providers like yourselves, those of you in leadership positions that are influencing change with funders and policymakers, you're also the bridge to the end users as well. So in a way, we have a lot in common with you, because our technology straddle all those segments as well. So I love how it's my quote in here, I think, which is kind of funny to read, but what I wanted to talk about today, and the product that we're bringing to you today, it's called Karto. And the reason for naming it Karto, it's an Esperanto word for map. And if you know anything about Esperanto language, it's a synthetic language that was developed and taken up by the United Nations as a way of bringing peace after World War II. And when we were thinking about how we wanted to name our products, we wanted to kind of convey that sense of hopefulness. And of course, we were naming them during what it continues to be the invasion of Ukraine. So it just seemed like a really appropriate reminder as well in our naming convention too. So Karto means map. And the reason we use the word map, it's because it brings visibility and brings sense to something that doesn't always make sense in the world, which unfortunately is our beloved social sector ecosystem. And so we've got tons of actors, we've got tons of data about folks, about organizations, et cetera, but it's been really, really tough to make it something coherent that we can put to action when we need it most. So that data set around what this ecosystem looks like, we've been building that, as some of you know, for the last 3 years. And that's been the kind of grindstone work that so much of our systems mapping work has been about, is to create this giant data set. And so the end result has been amazing. We've got this amazing data set now that is, 100,000 listings across the country, 300,000 service and need tags, so indicators of what these listings are offering community, 6.2 million word data set that we've amassed, and still more. And that's about to grow by 20-fold with some of the new technology and improvements that we're bringing to it. And again, across the country as well. So the cool part was, let's turn this into something we can make navigatable for users. And everybody's familiar with the HelpSeeker.org front-facing piece. But on the back end, we've also said there's a lot of value here in this data to folks that are also doing that service provision and that service planning. And so we've been racking our brains, doing lots of interviews with some of you. I've interviewed as well. Some of you have met with us over the last few months to say, what can we do with this amazing data set? What can we do with other data sets that the social sector could benefit from? And how can we make that very, very user-friendly? Because you're busy, you're doing the frontline work. You're not going to, go out and get a PhD in mining data because of one report. It's not efficient. It's not a good use of time. And there's actually technology to help you do that now. So that was the premise of looking at our next phase of work around Karto as well. So this is what we came up with, and obviously I'll show you around the product as well and tell you more about it. But it's really been designed for social service providers in really key roles. So it's those executives, the research teams, the fundraising, marketing folks, people that are putting together your proposals, your research and evaluation team. So those are the folks that we have in mind when we designed what I'm about to show you. And so it gives you that data that's curated, visualized. It's easy to essentially cut and paste from the product into your presentations, into your reports to funders, into your funding applications. And it has it all at your fingertips so that you're not having to look in a billion different places for it. That's been the dream of it. We're constantly, I should also say, like, this is our 5.0 release, AKA there's always releases that are coming. So we have releases, mini releases every 2 weeks, and then we have bigger releases every month. So just because it's looks the way I'm going to show you today, it's always going to be adding new things and improvements, et cetera. The other best way to improve a product is to hear from our users as well. So none of the apps that you know and love got there without the input, the kind of crowdsourced innovation that comes from all of us working on them together. So there's always an opportunity to provide feedback. In fact, we love it. We have a giant list of feedback, and then we actually prioritize and move through that list to make it better all the time. So a couple of things that I'm going to be able to show you. And again, it's always better to see in action, but some of the things to look out for. It's a way to assess supply and demand for social needs in your community. So think about, the various services, programs, organizations. Some of them are nonprofits, some of them are charities, some of them are government, et cetera. What does that all look like in the community? What does your community look like in comparison to other communities? And I can tell you some use cases of where that would be interesting to know about. What demographics are being served? If we know that certain programs are really focusing on a particular population, what does that look like? And do we have enough of them? That's always the kinds of questions we're trying to answer here. Are there gaps? Are there duplications? AKA, if I'm an executive director that's looking to expand service provision in my community, where are the gaps? And being able to have that landscape at your fingertips so that you know exactly who's doing what is really critical. And of course, we've always bringing in the other data, which is what are people looking for in your community as well. And can you look at the real-time demand while you're considering what you might be expanding to next or asking for additional funding for, having that proof point, that data to back up the anecdotal important stories and your program data, but backing that up with some additional quantifiable data as well, which it's a value add for this. There we go. So social data trends, we're going to, and here is a bit of an overview of what it looks like, and I'll play around with it for you as well. But the social data trends, there's topics that we have available. So the renter needs story, so the ability to look at rental market data so you understand renters versus homeowners. Again, nothing super innovative about it until you realize that actually it's all together, it's all been visualized, it includes your community and it benchmarks it against the province and the country so that you can have that all in one place. It's also got housing need, mental health and addictions, economic and population changes, and good news, census data is being added to this because it just became released. So every time there's a census release, we also update this data set as well. So you have every trend from 2011 to 2022. So also really important. Key population, so how is the Indigenous population faring in the community, immigrant population, your top ethnicities, et cetera. So things that you're probably very familiar with, but the value add here is that it's all together. So you don't have to pull it from different sources. You don't need to create charts. You can just cut and paste the charts and off you go. You can also compare your localities with drop downs that you can see there as well. The next one, which is stuff you can't get anywhere else, which is it's our data that I mentioned before, that 6.2 million word data set. So we've got two big things here that we're going to be able to show you. So one is really about the supply mix in your community. So what does the social sector supply look like in your community in excruciating yet still easy to understand details? So we want to be able to show you, here's a screenshot of Ottawa, who's providing what, how many locations are providing this, and then let's look at the descriptions as well of what's happening in the community. This again is really powerful for executive directors who might be looking at building a collaboration. It might be really powerful if you're looking at a coordinated access approach and you're wanting to build coalitions around a particular population. So again, being able to scroll and identify these groups is really critical. There's some other cool stuff that I'll walk you through in a second as well, but that's at a glance. And then the heat map, which I think is better when I show you it live, because it's like a really cool. The service gaps and duplications, this is super, it was like really hard pull for our data science team to get there. There's also obviously lots of stuff coming soon, but we focused on housing and homelessness programs. So actual program types and services within those program types. So you go into a community and you know that everybody's offering very different types of services, and they might be calling all of them, let's say, housing first, but what exactly is being provided there? So is it case management? Is it medical care? Is it, I don't know, financial subsidies? So actually drilling down exactly what the resources are within each of those detailed program types. And then, for instance, being able to compare, well, this rapid rehousing program has this, and this being offered versus this rapid rehousing program. Again, and being able to say, hey, maybe I want to add some of these program features into my offering, or hey, maybe that's the stuff I want to be expanding for my clients because it seems to be in increasing demand when people are looking for support. So that level of detail, we've never been able to do that before. It's actually mind-boggling. Like, this is my dream come true for the last, however long, to be able to do this and to actually see it come to life has been really cool. So housing and homelessness continuum is what we're going to be showing you today. And we're currently working on mental health and addictions. We're going to be working on the food continuum next, and from there, domestic violence. So again, every month there's new stuff happening as well, so that you get it all in one shot. So the access piece, and again, I'll come back to this one as well. Oh, here's a little screenshot of the heat map. If you guys are interested in this and you see an opportunity to use this in your programs, we've got the pricing structure a bit different than our kind of funder programs, obviously, because funders have very, very different needs when it comes to this data, and they do quite a different simulations and modeling. It gets pretty complex. So that pricing structure is obviously going to be higher, but we also know that times are not really conducive to big budget asks for the social sector. And so what we landed on in consultations with you guys is 199 monthly or that 2,400 or just under 2,400 yearly is a really fair price point, where the comparison to, just by way of comparison, when we were chatting with a CEO just last week, he said he just spent $20,000 doing exactly like a tiny portion of this for a new program. He was wanting to see how the program would fit in the landscape in his community. It was in a different city, it was in Calgary, and the price point that he paid a consultant to do essentially this was 20 grand. We've heard others that have paid even more than that. But again, we're doing so much more streamlining now that we don't need to be charging that. And it's not going to get the usage that we want in the sector if the price point is super high. So we think it's a fair and it's a hell of a deal, having done consulting in the space and having done my fair share of environmental scans with some of you. Actually, this is a way cheaper way to go. And even your consultants can use this as well to kind of cut down the cost if they are providing consulting services for you. If you're hiring one of them to do a strategic plan for you, for instance, and you're hiring them for 10 grand and they're charging you 5,000 of it to gather data, well, why not just streamline that process and save some money, or use that money to do something more important for clients, for instance. Okay, so that's that detail as well. I'm just going to double check here. And now it's really like time to show you what this thing looks like, because it's all, oh, that's our webinar contact info. I'll come back to this. Okay, so let's see what this baby looks like, right? So I pulled it up just because it's way easier than to scroll around, but you would get a login, of course, after you sign up, and you'd be able to, of course, get oriented here. This is what your kind of landing page dashboard looks like. And I'm just going to walk you through, if I, let's say, was an executive director and my ask was, let's show me as an executive director what's happening in this community, so that me as a board member understand that you know what you're talking about when it comes to your SWOT analysis for your strategic plan. So that's a very typical situation where an executive director will then have to figure out, like, okay, right, okay, where do I get my rental market data? Okay, so, well, here it is, right? So we can actually start to scroll in here, and okay, I made the demo for Toronto and Ottawa just because it's easier that way, but you can have other cities. And I want to understand, I don't even know where to begin. So I would have obviously what the key indicators are. And okay, this gives me 6 trends right here that I can take a look at what's happening in Toronto. It's all automatically synthesized into key analysis. And I want to understand pricing changes, housing affordability, suitability. Say I'm wanting to tell my board that what's happening in the housing market in Toronto is really affecting our population, and we're going to probably need to go after some more fundraising because the prices are going up. So I'm coming to them with my usual data, and of course our usual data comes from CMHC, right? So in our census, and of course, as you know, the census is 2016 yet, but okay, I have what I have and I'm ready to go. I plop that in. But of course, what a good board member is going to challenge me on as an executive director is they're going to say, well, that's cool, Alina, that, these vacancy rates are what they are. And the rent is what it is. But, things have really changed since COVID. And unfortunately, your data is not up to speed. Well, good news, because we thought about that. So what we did is actually start to mine novel data sets so that we can have as real time as possible market data around these social needs. So what you're looking at here is a comparison of Kijiji and CMHC. So CMHC data, as you can see here, and for a 3-bedroom, and Toronto is 1854, and 3-bedroom is 2784 on Kijiji. So the board member is absolutely right to challenge us. That's a big difference. And if we're serving families and making our pitch to our funders that we need subsidies at 1854, because that's what everybody's using, we're way offside, right? We're off by $1,000 per family in that analysis. So that makes a humongous difference, of course. So of course, if I was said executive director, I would take that to my funder, right? I would make the case for increasing my financial subsidies for family. I would make a case for public policy advocacy as well. I would be able to take that data, drop it in my report, and off I go. So that's one use case that I often come across. Like I said, that might apply to inclusion and diversity. It might apply to mental health and addictions, housing and homelessness, economics. So all of these things are constantly getting updated as well. So if there's something in here that you're dying to have, I already know about domestic violence, we're working on it. Public safety is another one that we're exploring as well. I'd love to hear from you. So it's an open invitation to our community to always be crowdsourcing your ideas, because that's where we get all these ideas. PS, that's how we keep this fresh and how we keep it relevant to your needs. That's also why we make it monthly pricing, because that's how you guys help us stay accountable to you as the user community to ensure that we're constantly innovating new exciting features. So next one, I mentioned how excited I was about our own data and actually bringing that to life for you. So on this, we split it off into three types of features. And so one is the supply mix, and I'll show you each of them. The supply mix is where you get that at a glance of what's happening in your community in terms of the social sector supply of supports. Service gaps and duplications, that's really digging even deeper into continuums. And I'm going to show you housing and homelessness as our first story in that feature. And then the supply demand heat maps, that's actually taking a look at exactly where people are looking for. I love this feature. It's Harmon on our team this has been his baby. And every time I look at it, it looks better and better and better. And it's cool. I'll show it to you. So the supply mix, this one, like I said, it's and sorry, my internet's a little bit, hopefully I'm not, sometimes my internet kicks out and starts cruising my neighbor's internet, Chloe 5G, which is not fun. But here it is. So what we're able to look at here, and again, I'm demoing to you Ottawa, but obviously you can take a look at any other city as well. So basic needs, and then if you click on that, you can see there's 1344 listings around basic needs. There's 785 around mental health and addictions, and you can read the rest. It's a pretty good at a glance what's happening in Ottawa, so you know what's up. Now I've clicked on basic needs, but I might be able, well, I know I'm able to, I can click on mental health and addictions as well. And what happens here, as you can see, it updates over here so that we get a sense of what kind of service need categories are being addressed here. So these are just giving you a little flavor of what these services are up to. Like I said, we can dig even further into them, but this is the place I would start. So the use case might be, let's say I'm looking at, let's go back to basic needs. Say that's a really, it's our most popular category when people look for help, actually, which is another interesting thing to note. But you can see here, like a lot of services are doing education and training around basic needs. So that's interesting. Less of them are providing actual interventions, or some of them, even less of them, are actually providing housing or shelter, etc. Not a surprise. Lots of them provide education and referrals, for instance. That's great, but we might be able to say, hey, there's only a very few in this category that are providing that actual housing. Very few that are providing goods and clothing as well, that kind of home-based stuff. So if I'm looking to, let's say, expand my offerings, I might be able to make a case to say, we're the only one in this particular area that might be providing this mix of services. And here's my proof point. I can take a screenshot of this. I can actually download this map. There's an option here to just cut and paste this into your presentation, and off you go. The other cool thing is, if I'm wanting to make that business case, and again, I'm going to put myself right now in the shoes of the fundraising professional. Sometimes it's the CEO in our smaller organization. Sometimes you actually have the immense luxury of actually having somebody that's dedicated to writing proposals, et cetera. And oftentimes the biggest pain is we can create those stories, those anecdotes from clients. We have our program data, but it's hard to make the case with other data as well about what's happening in the ecosystem to really show how unique you are. But everybody is unique, right? Everybody's mix of services is quite different when you really drilled out into it. Sorry, that's my reminder that I'm at the halfway point, which I'm actually doing good. So being able to say, there's lots of folks that are providing that education and training around this topic, around basic needs in my community. Around basic needs, but look how there's not that many doing this around women, or even fewer around LGBTQ. So again, being able to do that work and drilling down by each kind of focus area, and having the numbers and the backup, they'll literally just take the chart and drop it into your presentations to make that business case is really, really powerful. So if that doesn't quite do it for you, and again, you can do it from here. If that doesn't make the case, you can go even further into this feature and drill into how unique are we when it comes to the kinds of services that we put together as a package for our community. So again, I'm looking at Ottawa still. And what this chart shows, again, basic needs, but I can click on mental health and addiction, safety and abuse, health, medical, emergency. So however you want to slice and dice, being able to say, hey, there's actually very little happening when it comes to opioid addiction services, right? So that's one. And however, in our neck of the woods, that's exactly what we're looking to provide is to introduce new opioid addiction services. And we want to marry that with supportive housing, for instance. And I'm just obviously making that up. So being able to say, look at this, like there's very few, this would indicate to me that there's an opportunity there to expand services, or to look at partnerships even potentially further. The other one is obviously to understand what everybody else is up to. So what does your system look like in your community? How do people package together services? You can see information referral is often paired with education and training, not a surprise there, but there's also some more interesting ones of, how hygiene is often paired with, here's a good one, with food and housing, right? So interesting. Locality comparison. This one, again, I really, really love, because I always think in comparisons. I'm like, that's cool that this is happening in my community, but is that good? Is that bad? Like, what's the reference points? So I'm showing you Calgary, Toronto, and Ottawa, but you can kind of pick your poison, obviously. You can have Ottawa and Toronto comparing. You can have Ottawa and Saskatoon. But again, looking at, for instance here, the differences between, let's go with housing. So the listings around housing, of course, Toronto is going to be higher, right? Of course, but look at hygiene listings in Ottawa in comparison to Toronto. If I was Toronto, I'd be interested in that. I'd be looking at why we're so not on the same page as a fellow Ontario city, and is that potentially indicating that we might be needing to add some services in this space? Again, you can look at mental health and addiction, safety and abuse, whatever your need category, and you can also filter this by population. So take a look at LGBTQ, right, and take a look at the variance here between, well, I would say even outreach around around basic needs to LGBTQ populations, there's proportionately way more happening in Toronto relative to Ottawa in that space. And I'm just using that as an example. So that's this feature. I said I would also show you the cool part on service gaps and duplications. And again, the big dream here is to go way deeper. Oh, I have an attendant question.
I think that's Rachel. It might be an accident, but you do have a question related to this one as well.
Okay.
Amy would like to know where we get the info and data for each community, for example, on homelessness. So we'll chat to it here.
Yeah, good one. Absolutely. So we have a team of systems mapping folks that basically scour and research the crap out of every community. And remember when I said the first 3 years of HelpSeeker has been building this data set? That's what we've been nose in the books type thing to build a data set. So it's got 6.2 million elements in it that we're now putting together to bring to the rest of the community. That's how we do it. How do we mine it? That's a really even better question, because I am really bad at explaining it. But essentially, we use a combination of human and machine. So what we do is we have the 6.2 million, the giant data set, and then we mine the data set with an algorithm to generate the insights. And then we have the team go back and quality assure it. And then we run the algorithm again, and then we check it again, and algorithm again, and check it again. So it's machine plus human, because you can't do it without the humans, that's for sure. So that's a really, really good question. And the data set is, of course, constantly changing as well, because the systems are changing. So that's also another reason why we wanted to make this as a subscription model, because just pulling the data once, things happen all the time, right? In the community, programs come and go. We do our very, very best to keep those the data up to date. We have campaigns to ensure that our end users, our service providers, are also being able to list their services as well in a way that they can advertise to the community what they do. So it's a combination of those two things. Absolutely. Yeah, good question. So on this one, I said I'm going to show you housing and homelessness service mix. We have mental health and addictions we're currently working on. So this is really cool. This is my favorite. No, I have other favorites, but this is one of my favorites. So this, again, I'm showing you Toronto and Ottawa, but I'm actually digging a little bit deeper into each city's housing and homelessness specific offerings. And as you all know, everybody talks about program types in our communities, and there's emergency shelter, there's intensive case management, there's safe housing, there's community housing. Sometimes the same organization will do multiple programs, or will actually describe their program in different ways. That's okay, right? We're not here to call out program types and what's a program type. What we do here is report how programs describe their offerings, and then we visualize that for everybody else to understand what's happening in the community as well. So emergency shelter, all the way to things like rent supports, addictions treatment, all these things that are often included in our continuums to do with housing and homelessness. And you might say, Alina, why did you put low barrier shelter or addictions treatment? Because we all know that to serve these populations, it's actually quite a bit of overlap between the addictions continuum and the pure housing continuum, or the homelessness housing first continuums. So we've actually done mapping to understand all of these terminologies and how they relate to each other. So for instance, I'll show you intensive case management, because that's an interesting one. What we also know about this program type is that it usually bundles several things. It bundles services. So actually giving people housing is one thing, like it actually does housing locations and landlord negotiations, etc. But they often, so it's not just case management that Intense ICM provides, right? I know you know that. So it's a bundling of various services. So these are the ones that are often offered so not always. Sometimes they provide direct financial help, or they provide a financial subsidy. Other times they do advocacy or system navigation so that the client gets a rent subsidy from somebody else, but the program itself doesn't provide the money to the client. Sometimes, not always. Cleaning and maintenance. Sometimes these programs actually help you clean up your unit, and we know that's actually a really important. The other thing that we included here is when somebody says, I'm providing, okay, and we haven't done food yet, but I can't wait to show you food next webinar. But what exactly are they providing resources for? So sometimes they provide advocacy and information. Sometimes they provide an actual, bed. Sometimes they provide meals and access to a counselor. Less often they provide personal care workers, community activities. So it's not enough to say something is a program type. We need to break down exactly what that entails as well. And that's what we try to do here. And you can, again, check it out by different areas. So even emergency shelter, what is domestic violence shelter, low barrier shelter, high barrier shelter, if known, right? We don't always know. But when we do know, we include that data as well. So that's that. And of course, if you wanted to take a look at Ottawa compared to Toronto or other communities, comparing them to each other, this one would tell me that there's better visibility around domestic violence in Ottawa compared to Toronto for sure, by the looks of this. And then lastly, if we wanted to cross-reference these listings by, let's go affordable housing in case somebody's really into that, by population. So being able to see any focus in this program type by families, women, et cetera, parents, et cetera, or where things are missing, right? That again will tell you as a research and evaluation person putting together, who's doing what and where we fit. This is kind of your go-to to build that business case or report to funder on why your program is existing to fill a specific need. And it's also a really cool way to say, hey, everybody else is doing cleaning and maintenance, might be something we want to introduce, for instance, or home care services might be something we want to introduce because there might be an opportunity there. So it might give you some ideas to expand your offerings as well if you're looking to look at a new market or to look at a new offering. The other use case I've heard this from CEOs and program folks in other demos has been, lots of them are looking to expand in other markets. So some folks are looking to expand. Let's say they're doing a killer job around families and they want to expand into the domestic violence sector. I was chatting to somebody that was offering counseling for a bunch of populations, and they saw an opportunity to actually make their service a provincial counseling service. And so they wanted this data to be able to say, well, I don't even know what's happening in Edmonton, or I don't know what's happening in Grand Prairie, but I'm wanting to expand there. So it's really important for me to know what I'm walking into in that community. So I know what relationships I need to start building. I also know how I fit in that ecosystem as well. And this is kind of what they would be using that for as well. So that's that. Let me see how I'm doing for time, because I want to show you one of my favorite ones. This is like my, I'll just kind of show you the big piece. You can see here, I just want to show you housing because we've been talking about housing all day. So again, being able to visualize your supply demand in a visual way, in a map kind of way, has been, again, another one of my dreams come true recently. Thanks to our team for the hard nights on this stuff, because this is not easy to do. But let's go to our Ontario, because again, we've been chatting about Toronto. So what I often hear in communities is, well, but is that really that might have been a need last year? But we have lots of supply, we've got lots of services, and funders actually not necessarily service providers, because again, you guys know what's happening on the ground. So they'll say, well, there's lots happening around this. Like, do we really, do we really need any more like housing or shelter or food, right? And they'll say, okay, well, we already have lots of food services. And then I'll say, oh, okay, well, like there's actually quite a bit of demand for that. And then I'll just pop this up and I'll be like, actually, boom, here's actually where people are looking for food in your community. And, we actually don't have very much around that. Or they'll be like, hey, there's, we got lots of stuff for seniors, or let's see, or housing. Do we really need any more? And I can be like, actually, yeah, there's people looking for help. Absolutely. And here's the neighborhoods, and this data is actually like live data again. So a screenshot to be able to say, no, this is happening in our community right now. Here's the needs. And you can obviously layer things. You can layer housing and food and kind of look at the comparison to see how it changes and where it coincides as well. So that in a nutshell is HelpSeeker Karto for you. Like I said, more stuff happening all the time. For those of you that are on HelpSeeker, you can manage your listings in here. So you can, somebody asked, how do we get the data? Some of the data comes from service listings. So when you guys kind of advertise your offering to people looking for help, so those people that I just showed the heat map for are looking for help all the time on the platform. So being able to see live and updated listings from you guys is a huge help to them. It also ensures that the analysis is that much better because you've vetted our interpretation of those offerings as well. You can also look at all the listings and sort through like what's happening in this community, and being able to get contact information for these folks if you wanted to reach out to them is another really cool one. System reports, so canned reports, being able to, like I said, generate a report at will and create that. I want to report that pulls data for what's been happening in the last month for this group, etc. We've got some new exciting ones coming to resource guides. So you being able, as part of this platform, to just generate your own resource guide. So you can print it off for your clients, you can hand it out, you can add your brand to it, and off you go. So maybe I'll pause there and see what else folks have asked. Jesse, did you want to banter back and forth and see what have asked? I said to Jesse to make me less boring.
I said, Alina, what's my role in this? So I'm here for the banter.
She's here for the banter and to text me more focus. Too much detail. So.
No, you were great. We had a great question here from Susie, and it was a question about this database. Does it capture all the charities, nonprofits, and social enterprises in Canada? And then also, what does that mean for access through the system?
Oh yeah, so we map as much as we can get our hot little hands on. So if they have websites, if they have charities, the charities that are part of the social sector, absolutely. We've got some charities that are charities, like MasterCard Foundation, for instance. We have their data. We actually do have a cool feature that will have a bunch of stuff about those sorts of charities. But we wanted to focus this supply mix on people that are actually providing supply, like doing service delivery, because a lot of charities don't actually touch clients' lives, right? So we were kind of focusing on folks that are actually part of the network of supports locally. And so yeah, there's nonprofits, there's charities, there's social enterprises, there's private counselors as well that could be on the platform because they're doing work in the space. Especially, we love counselors, if you know any, by the way, that provide like sliding scale stuff as well. Legal and financial counselors as well that provide. So they might be like a mom and pop shop that are accredited and everything like that, but they might not be your kind of typical supply when you think about supply. But our focus has been nonprofits and charities for sure. That's been the biggest focus. But the system can accommodate any permutation.
A question here from David, and it's adjacent, but Alina, I know you'll be excited to talk about it. So how can we track the success of community referrals, short and long term, speaking about a quality of referral and how often are services used?
I do like to talk about that. I do like to talk about that a lot. So this is like related to Karto, but it's R&D. We have the Compass project that is underway right now with Digital Supercluster and U of T that is looking at this essentially like a network of referral management tool. So soon, but not today, but soon, my team's like, don't say a date. We're gonna kill you. We do actually have like a prototype that we're testing in Edmonton, actually, to give us feedback on the. It's like a wireframe, like an interactive wireframe that tracks the client between entities, and we're interestingly, of course, we're picking like the most hardest case, which is like the client experiencing chronic homelessness that is being referred between health, police, and homeless serving system. Why? Because that's where we need to sort out the privacy and data security stuff. So we are actually actively working on that. Where it's going to show up in Karto is like, imagine another one of these things that drops down where you can see your referrals and the success of those referrals. So how many referrals were made to me? How many of those referrals I declined, my rationale for declinement, but also the referrals I made to other entities as well. So I again, I'm not going to promise you a timeline other than to say we're actively working on that piece, and it's in our product roadmap, and we have funding for the build of this as well. So it's coming very, very soon, and you'd be able absolutely to have that real-time understanding of how your role fits into this bigger ecosystem. The more, and of course, the more people use the referral mechanism, the better the data becomes, and the cooler it is for the client, because they would actually be able to also have access to that information for their appointments and where their referral is at in the sequence, how long they might be waiting for, etc. So that is that we haven't named it yet, but it's part of the Compass project, and we'll have a dashboard in Karto for you to see the data, because it's part of the big picture of what's happening in your community and who's doing what.
I think the additional point is too that this is all we do. So we're going to continue to release features and technology that supports around these themes. We're 100% dedicated to that. And so this is our first goal, but as we build partnerships, we're going to continue to add things based on what you tell us and your colleagues tell us are most useful.
Exactly. Yeah. That's again part of this whole like, let's make this monthly, because we want to prove to you that it was worth your investment, right? I figure $200 is like I said, I think it's a sweet deal. You might not think it's a sweet deal. You tell us if it's a sweet deal or not. But that's how we continue to build new stuff. Is if we're able to monetize on this stuff, then we can bring in additional features. I mean, all we do with the money is we put it back into staffing, right? It's and R&D, really. Last year, we put $1 million into R&D. And what does that mean? We hired more staff to do R&D, to bring you cooler things. So it's kind of like crowdsourcing R&D in the social sector is how I like to think of it. But also making sure that we're getting really, really sweet people working on this, like people that, would otherwise be working at probably Amazon or Neo Financial, and we're super lucky that they're taking way less pay and way more headache, and they have to deal with me, which I'm a huge pain in their ass. But this is the dream, right? That we're making this huge blob of social issues visible so that we can really get on top of our public policy advocacy and our systems change work faster. So we're not spending the time on curating this business case. It's already here for us. We can get on with the important part. And it's also putting technology to use on systems change, which is the whole point. There's no point in building technology that's going to make the world worse, in our opinion. The whole point is to make the world better and fairer. And so anything we can do to do that is in scope for us.
We have a question here from Debbie. Is Alberta 211 dashboard data and Community 211 listings of service providers included in your database?
Interesting question. We do have a project with 211 Alberta to exactly do that. So it's right now it's in the R&D phase with the Data to Action project, and Gary, the CEO of CMHA Edmonton, who manages that, it's been such a nice shift in 211 in a focus on innovation and technology partnerships. So we're actually really excited. I reached out to other 211s as well to look at similar curation of it, because again, every 211 collects things a little bit differently. So obviously we need to do a bunch of work to make sure that the data is kind of value add to this. But absolutely, there you could have, again, what we have with them is a data sharing agreement where we have their phone call data on what people have been looking for in there as well. And the data, their listing data, they don't own that, so we can't negotiate with them, unfortunately. So I'm not sure how. I still don't really know how we would get that. What we've done is just built a parallel data set because we couldn't figure out how to do data sharing, and they can't give us access to that in Alberta, unfortunately. That might change in the future. I'm not sure, but if there's a way, if there's a will, there's a way, right? So absolutely, there's more opportunities there to add new data sets in here. Yeah. Any other questions?
Looks like that's it. Any
Sweet.
other? Do you run customized data for communities outside larger CMA areas? For example, communities outside Edmonton, Calgary?
Heck yes. Our favorite communities are like, sorry, my bad. I love large urban centers for one reason, but I love working in that 100,000 or even the 50,000, 100,000, even a little bit less, depending on the province, because they're communities that are just kind of coming up on these major social challenges. Sometimes for the first time, you're like, hey, we were a small town and now we've got, people sleeping rough. We've got people coming into our city office looking for domestic violence resources. Like, what is going on here? So those are communities, that's exactly where we want to start intervening. So yeah, we actually do, those communities are in scope of this stuff. So you can actually look at those smaller communities and compare. But we also have some additional services that we like to add on to that. Usually those communities want data, and that's one thing, but they sometimes also want a bit of strategic support on what to do when that happens. So we have our wonderful community success team who kind of gets them ready for that. What does your next 100,000 population look like in terms of your social infrastructure? What should you be putting in place now so that in another 3 years, when you reach the next population milestone, you're not shocked? Because unfortunately, with social issues, if you don't get on top of your social network of supports really early on, you end up really in a pretty negative spiral later on. So we're actually doing a really cool project. Travis was just in Strathmore, Alberta, which is relatively small compared to almost I don't want to call them a bedroom community of Calgary, but there's a lot of overlap of where people work in Calgary and live in Strathmore. Same thing. They've never even had to do a housing needs assessment before, but now they suddenly do, right? So absolutely, that's the point of this is, and those communities don't have the $100,000 budgets to hire the big consulting firms to do a bunch of work for them. They only have $200 a month in their budget to do it. And so that's another reason where we priced it much lower than to ensure that everybody has access to the opportunity to make those business cases to funders before those issues become giant problems later on. Great question.
Alina, we have one more question here. We have 3 minutes, so maybe speedy question. And Amy, I'm happy to follow up with you. But with these smaller communities, how do you get the data on services and programs that aren't really publicly advertised? For example, they need to be connected to an organization to qualify, or groups are bad at advertising and it's mainly word of mouth.
Yeah, that's a good one. So I'll use Strathmore again, because this is where we had this work. So for what you're referring to in that case is if it's a small community and that's a big pain point, the visibility of services is problematic. What we do then is a combination of obviously the online research, but we also scour social media for these networks as well. So it's called informal organization or grassroots mapping. So we have a process for that as well. And that's how we do that. Another strategy that we have, and we're actually looking at this for, I don't know if we can talk about like who the client is. It's in the federal government, but it's essentially phone calls then. So we create a list of stakeholders in our stakeholder mapping process, and then we do calls. Our system mapping team does phone calls to get their listings up and get that information out. And you're absolutely right. In those instances, those services are so tiny and just grassrooty that they don't have resources to create websites. So the HelpSeeker listing is like their only online presence, which makes that even more important. So the way to do that, of course, is just the old-fashioned qualitative research way. No shortcuts there. No magic algorithm for that. Not yet, at least. But great question.
Awesome. Any parting words?
Yeah, thank you everybody for caring. Hopefully you think this is cool. We're super pumped about it. Thank you for all your support as well. I know we are always coming to you for ideas, and you entertain us and promoting our stuff, because we continue to exist and grow because of your support. So really big thank you to our community. And then my last big thank you is to our team, because this what we've accomplished in the last couple of weeks has been mind-boggling, and I'm just so excited and proud of what we've been able to do. And now you just raised the bar for yourself, because now everybody's going to expect this every 2 weeks. So sorry about that. Just kidding. We can take a breath. Yeah. So thank you so much, and happy to answer any more questions. We'll obviously send you all the information and all that. Thank you so much, Jesse. Any last words from?
Yep, we'll send out the presentation. We'll send out the recording. We've also put the landing page here for the website, and please reach out to us. The more feedback, the better.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.